Imagine this. Every day, millions of people open their social media, showing a part of themselves, sharing moments, thoughts, and opinions. But who is that person reflected on the screen? Is it your true self, or an edited version, shaped by the influence of others and social expectations? Welcome to this journey, where we will explore how social media is shaping our personality from a deeply Jungian perspective. Carl Jung, one of the pioneers in depth psychology, left us valuable teachings on how our identity, or rather, our identities, are constructed. According to Jung, we are not a single, fixed entity. In reality, we are like a kaleidoscope of different facets that we show to the world, depending on the situation. But what happens when social media amplifies and distorts these facets? This is where the concept of the digital self comes in. When thinking about Jung and his work on the unconscious, it is crucial to understand that within us, there are many hidden parts that we do not even know. These parts form what he called the shadow. The shadow contains those aspects of ourselves that we repress or that simply do not fit with the image we want to project to the world. And when we are on social media, we often create an idealized version of ourselves, carefully selecting what to show and what to hide. Now, I invite you to reflect. To what extent are you creating a digital self that reflects who you really are? Or is it a version that you have adjusted to fit the expectations of others? If you have ever felt trapped in the need for approval on social media, you are dealing with a very deep tension between your true self and the image you project. What happens on social media is similar to what Jung described as the confrontation between our persona and our shadow. The persona, in Jungian terms, is the mask we wear to interact with the world. It is the version of ourselves that we believe is acceptable to society. On social media, this mask is further perfected. Every selfie, every comment, and every like contributes to building a polished version of ourself. But what about everything that is left out of that image? That is our shadow. Those parts of us that we do not show, that we do not share because they do not align with what we believe others want to see. And this is where social media plays a very important role. It amplifies our persona and pushes our shadow further and further into the unconscious. Every time we seek external validation on social media, we move further away from our true self and reinforce that mask. I want you to think about this. How many times have you hesitated before sharing something on your social media because it wasn't good enough? That is a clear example of how our digital persona influences our decisions. We feel the pressure to show only the best, to fit into the norms of what is acceptable or desired. And in the process, we begin to lose touch with our authenticity. In the next part, we will delve into how this disconnection affects our psyche. We will talk about the role of the collective unconscious and the archetypes that play a crucial role in the formation of our digital identity. But before we continue, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. Are you creating your identity on social media consciously? Or are you being carried away by what you think others expect of you? Remember, if this topic interests you, subscribe to the channel and leave your comments on how you feel social media has influenced the way you perceive yourself. We are just beginning this journey into the depths of Jungian psychology applied to the digital world. Are you ready to explore your digital shadow? Now let's delve deeper into how Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious and archetypes comes into play in this digital environment. According to Jung, in addition to the personal unconscious that we all possess, there is also a collective unconscious, a kind of repository of images, symbols, and experiences shared by all humanity. This collective unconscious is full of archetypes, which are universal patterns of behavior and perception that manifest in all cultures. Some examples are the hero, the mother, the sage, and the fool. These archetypal figures are not only found in our dreams or mythologies, but also in our daily interactions, including those we have on social media. When you browse social media, have you noticed how certain people seem to fit perfectly into certain roles? Think about influencers. Some of them seem to take on the role of the hero, showing their success, personal growth, and leadership. Others take on the figure of the mother, offering care and advice. In reality, many of the archetypes that Jung identified are still alive and very present on our digital platforms. Without realizing it, these archetypes influence the way we behave online and the roles we assume. Social media is the perfect stage for the manifestation of these archetypes, as it allows people to embody specific versions of themselves that resonate with these universal patterns. When someone adopts the archetype of the hero in their profile, sharing stories of success, overcoming obstacles and motivation, they are projecting a symbol that goes beyond their individual person. They are touching something deep within us, something that we all share on a collective level. And this, in part, explains why certain people attract so many followers. It is not just because they are charismatic, but because they are embodying an archetypal figure that resonates with something deeply human. This power of archetypes on social media not only affects those who embody them, but also those who consume them. When we follow an influencer or public figure who represents the archetype of the hero or the sage, we are projecting our own aspirations and desires onto that person. It is as if we were seeing a part of ourselves reflected in them. But this can also create a problem. We move even further away from our own individuation process. Individuation, according to Jung, is the process of becoming oneself, of integrating all parts of our psyche, the persona, the shadow, the archetypes, etc., to reach a more complete understanding of who we are. However, on social media, it is easy to get caught up in the projection of these archetypes without realizing that we are, in a way, alienating ourselves from our true essence. When we idealize others or try to fit into these archetypal roles, we risk losing our authenticity. So, let's go back to you. Think for a moment. What role are you assuming on your social media? Are you embodying any archetype? Maybe you feel more comfortable adopting the role of the fool, using humor as a way to connect with others and hide parts of yourself. Or maybe you lean towards the archetype of the hero, always trying to show your best face, your achievements, and your ability to overcome any obstacle. Reflecting on this can give you clues about how social media is shaping your identity and how you are participating in this collective dynamic. However, there is something deeper we must consider. What happens when we move away from our shadow? Every archetype has a dark side. The hero can become arrogant and narcissistic. The sage can become manipulative. The fool, in his attempt to be funny, can hide a deep sadness or emptiness. Social media, by amplifying only the positive and acceptable aspects of these archetypes, pushes us to repress our shadows even more. Here is where the concept of the shadow becomes crucially important. The shadow contains not only our weaknesses, but also valuable aspects of ourselves that we have repressed. Perhaps, in your quest to project the archetype of the hero, you have suppressed your vulnerability or your deepest emotions. Or, in your attempt to be the sage, you have hidden your insecurity or your doubts. By projecting an idealized version of yourself on social media, you risk disconnecting from these parts of your being that, although uncomfortable, are essential for your personal growth. When we talk about the fragmentation of the self, we refer to the disconnection that occurs between the different parts of our psyche. By continuously projecting a polished and perfected version of ourselves on social media, we begin to divide ourselves. There is a growing distance between the person we show to the world and the person we really are, or at least the one we do not show. This division can generate a feeling of emptiness, of something not being right, and can intensify inner discomfort. To understand this phenomenon in more detail, let's return to the concept of the persona in Jungian psychology. The persona, as we mentioned earlier, is the mask we wear to interact with the world. It is the image we believe others expect from us. In the physical world, we usually change our persona according to the environment, at work, with friends, or with family. But on social media, this mask becomes something much more constant. We face the need to maintain a coherent and attractive image, which leads us to disconnect from other parts of ourselves that do not fit into that narrative. It is at this point where many begin to experience what we could call an authenticity crisis. Perhaps it has happened to you. You share something on your social media that you know does not reflect who you really are, but you do it because you believe it is what others expect. That internal dissonance between what you show and what you feel begins to grow. At first, it may be just a slight discomfort, a feeling that something does not fit. But over time, that feeling can turn into anxiety, stress, or even an existential void. This is an increasingly common phenomenon in the digital age. People feel that they are losing touch with who they really are. They are caught between the desire to fit in and the need for authenticity. Jung would describe this as a conflict between the persona and the individuation process. Individuation, as we mentioned earlier, is the process of integrating all parts of our being, both those we show and those we repress, to become a complete being. But on social media, this process is hindered by the constant pressure to maintain an attractive and successful image. So, how does this fragmentation of the self manifest? Often, it is reflected in our emotional life. When there is a disconnection between our digital persona and our real self, we can experience feelings of insecurity, emptiness, or even depression. This happens because deep down, we know that we are living a partial lie. We know that the image we project is not completely authentic, and that incongruence affects us psychologically. The more we reinforce this mask, the further we move away from our true self, and the harder it becomes to reconnect with our essence. So how can we begin to heal this fragmentation of the self and reconnect with our authenticity? First, we must be aware of the masks we are wearing. What are we trying to hide? What parts of ourselves have we stopped showing? Asking these questions can be uncomfortable, but it is a crucial step to begin breaking down the barriers we have built around our true identity. Second, we must remember that authenticity does not mean perfection. In a world where social media seems to glorify the flawless, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we must always be strong, always successful, always happy. But authenticity includes vulnerability, and it is precisely in that vulnerability where we find our true power. Showing our imperfections on social media can be a liberating act, both for ourselves and for others. It allows us to reconnect with our humanity and frees us from the burden of maintaining a constant facade. Finally, the key lies in balance. It is not about completely rejecting social media or eliminating our digital persona. After all, social media can also be a valuable tool for connection and personal expression. However, it is important to find a balance between the image we project and the reality of who we are. Integrating our shadow, being aware of the archetypes we embody, and maintaining a genuine connection with our inner self is fundamental to avoiding falling into the fragmentation of the self. The shadow, as we have seen, is that hidden part of our psyche, the part we do not show because it makes us uncomfortable or seems unacceptable. Jung reminds us that we all have a shadow. No matter how perfect the image we project may seem, deep within us, there are aspects that we prefer not to show, both to others and to ourselves. And on social media, this hiding intensifies. What happens then when our digital life is completely disconnected from our shadow? First, we lose the opportunity for personal growth. Integrating the shadow is one of the most important steps toward individuation, which is the process of becoming our most authentic and complete self. But to integrate the shadow, we must first confront it. We must look directly at those parts of ourselves that we have been repressing. Social media, paradoxically, offers us a unique opportunity for this. Although on the surface it seems to encourage superficiality and perfection, it can also be a very revealing mirror of our psyche. How? Through our reactions, our comments, our likes, and our posts. If you look closely, online interactions can tell us a lot about our shadow. Think about the moments when you have felt annoyed or irritated by something you saw on social media. Maybe it was a post that made you feel insecure. Or maybe it was someone else's success that aroused a feeling of envy in you. These are clear indications that something in our shadow is asking for attention. Jung said that what bothers us most about others is usually a reflection of something we have not accepted in ourselves. It is in those moments of discomfort where we can begin to explore which parts of our shadow we are avoiding. An interesting aspect of this process is that, by integrating our shadow, we also transform the way we present ourselves on social media. We no longer feel the same pressure to project a perfect image or to fit into certain archetypes. We become more authentic, more genuine. And this authenticity has a profound impact not only on us, but also on those around us. By showing ourselves as we are, with our strengths and vulnerabilities, we invite others to do the same. This generates more real and deep connections. However, this process is not easy. Social media constantly bombards us with images of success, beauty, and happiness, reinforcing the idea that we must be perfect. In this context, showing our vulnerabilities can seem like an act of weakness. But in reality, it is an act of courage. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." By showing our shadows, by being honest about our struggles and fears, we are taking a crucial step toward enlightenment and individuation. So, how can we begin to integrate our shadow in the context of social media? Here are some practical reflections. Be aware of your projections. As mentioned earlier, when something bothers you or provokes an emotional reaction on social media, take it as an opportunity to reflect. Ask yourself, why does this affect me so much? What part of myself am I projecting onto this situation? Accept your emotions. Instead of repressing or ignoring the uncomfortable emotions that arise on social media, learn to accept them. If you feel envy, insecurity, or frustration, do not judge yourself for it. Recognize those emotions as part of your shadow and try to understand what they are telling you about yourself. Share your vulnerability. Do not be afraid to show your imperfections on social media. By sharing your challenges or moments of doubt, you are not only freeing yourself from the burden of perfection, but also opening a space for others to connect with you more authentically. Seek balance. While it is important to be aware of how social media impacts your psyche, it is also essential to find a healthy balance. You do not have to share everything online or be completely transparent about your shadow. The important thing is to be authentic with yourself and allow yourself to be who you really are without feeling obligated to project an idealized image. First, it is important to remember that social media is not inherently negative. Like any tool, the impact it has on our lives depends on how we use it. If we use it automatically, driven by the need for external validation or the pressure to project a perfect image, we are likely to experience the negative effects we have discussed. But if we are conscious of our interactions and use social media intentionally, it can become a powerful tool for self-awareness and personal growth. So, how can we make this shift in perspective? Here, we will explore some key steps. Create authentic and conscious content. Once you have reflected on the purpose of your presence on social media, the next step is to start creating content that is authentic and aligned with your true self. This does not mean that you have to expose every aspect of your personal life or share your deepest thoughts all the time, but it does mean being honest with yourself about what you are sharing and why you are doing it. Instead of following trends or sharing content that you think will get more likes, ask yourself, does this content reflect my values and authenticity? By making this change, you free yourself from the pressure to conform to what others expect of you and begin to use social media as an extension of your individuation process. Cultivate authentic relationships. Social media gives us an incredible opportunity to connect with people from all over the world, but these connections can be superficial if we do not cultivate them consciously. Instead of focusing on the number of followers or friends you have, focus on the quality of your interactions. By seeking authentic relationships on social media, you can surround yourself with a community that supports your personal growth. Additionally, sharing your vulnerabilities or your self-awareness process on these platforms can inspire others to do the same, creating a more genuine and empathetic online space. Reflect on your online emotions. As we have mentioned in previous parts, the emotions that arise when interacting on social media can be powerful indicators of what is happening in your psyche. The next time you feel irritated, insecure, or bothered by something you see on social media, take a moment to reflect instead of reacting automatically. What is this emotion awakening in you? Is it an opportunity to explore something you have been repressing? By using social media as a tool for emotional reflection, you can begin to integrate more parts of yourself. Instead of seeing these emotions as something negative, use them as signals that guide you toward greater self-awareness. Establish conscious boundaries. One of the biggest challenges of social media is that it can consume a lot of our time and energy if we are not careful. This might involve limiting the amount of time you spend on social media or being more selective about the type of content you consume. Ask yourself, how does the content I see make me feel? If you notice that certain accounts or topics make you anxious or dissatisfied, it is a sign that you might need to adjust your digital consumption. Use social media as a mirror of the individuation process. Finally, you can begin to see your online interactions as an extension of your journey toward individuation. Instead of viewing social media as something superficial or a source of stress, you can turn it into a reflection of your self-awareness. By sharing content that aligns with your values, seeking authentic connections, and being aware of how what you see online affects you, you can use these platforms as a space to explore and express your true self. Thank you for joining me in this deep exploration of Jungian psychology and its relationship with social media. If this video has made you reflect, leave a comment, share it with someone who is also in search of their authenticity, and do not forget to subscribe to continue exploring these fascinating topics together. In our next video, we will continue delving into the world of depth psychology, interpersonal relationships, and the dynamics of the unconscious. See you soon in the next step of this journey towards self-awareness.